Old shop and windy love days. Wind Cafe, a Saturday night. The sound of wind chimes jingling together creates a series of pleasant sounds. The air conditioner is cool. The instrumental music river flow in you resounds evenly in the dense atmosphere of the restaurant. Thien An sat in a corner, gently stirring the milk foam of the matcha cup that had just been served, while thinking about miscellaneous things. Every now and then she looked out the door as if looking for someone. If she saw a guest walking in, she would raise her head again, then a hint of disappointment would appear in the bottom of her eyes. These actions could not escape the eyes of Nguyen, wind shop owner. He approached her, brought a plate of green tea-flavored tiramisu and set it down in front of her, pulled the chair across from him, and sat down. She didn't bother to look up, still lying down on the table. Knowing this customer for a long time, Nguyen did not notice her indifference. He tapped his fingers on the table. "Long time no see, you come to the shop, are you looking for someone?" The little girl sighed, and began to stir the foam again. Nguyen glared, slyly continued. "If you are waiting for someone, eat more cake, don't just order empty drinks. And you can stop stirring the milk foam, there's nothing wrong with them." Only now did Thien An raise his head to look directly into Nguyen's eyes, whispering softly. "What is love really? Looks like I accidentally lost something." The sentence seemed to blend in with other sounds, in the noise of the traffic outside. Wind Cafe, the old days. Thien An came to Wind for the first time when he rushed to the shop to avoid the rain. The sudden rain without warning, the freezing cold winter rain, the ice-cold raindrops kept falling down. She shivered and entered the shop. In contrast to the cold outside, Wind was much warmer. Gradually, she often came here every weekend, so the owner of the restaurant was familiar with her face. Sometimes when there were no customers, she would talk to her a few sentences. She knew that the owner of the shop had studied in Italy, returned to Vietnam to open a small coffee shop to do business. Perhaps that's why Wind always brings a little bit of Italy. Colorful model houses that simulate the houses on the island of Bruano in northern Italy are placed near the window right where hanging baskets of dried flowers and flowers. A real flower she didn't know the name of. In a few corners hung different pictures, below all clearly dated, House of Gold ca d'Oro. The ancient and romantic features of Italy are almost recreated in the narrow space of the shop. The shop is located in a small alley, so it's usually not very crowded. Ordering a cup of hot matcha, Thien An pulled a pile of books stacked on the table, plugged in an earphone to repeat extremes more than word. She started to do the homework. After a long time, I don't know how many hours have passed, Thien An stretched his shoulders to relieve fatigue, and saw a young man looking at him in the opposite corner. She quickly lowered her eyes, waited for a moment, and looked up again, but the guy was gone. She tapped herself on the head a few times, using her hand to brush the sideburns that fell from her forehead to the side, thinking in her mind, "Nothing, people look at something else, not at you." Days later, the guy still came to the bar, still sat in the same place, but didn't look at her anymore, or looked at her without her knowing. But she herself was attracted by the appearance of people. That guy comfortably leaned on the soft chair, his legs crossed, the shirt accentuated his elegant, youthful demeanor, holding a book she didn't know what it was, his eyes turned to outside the window where a few small potted plants are located. It really makes others feel at ease, and at ease. Days later, she still went to Wind to study, still occasionally peeking at the stranger in the corner. Perhaps there would be such silences between looking at each other if it weren't for a special day, when Thien An suddenly saw a piece of light purple ticket cleverly tucked in the corner of the basket of dried flowers at the table she used to sit on. A little bit of curiosity mixed with curiosity, she crept open it and looked around the shop for a while. The bold, italic letters kept hitting the eye. "Don't sneakily look at me like that, Thien An, winky face." She was startled. Her first reaction was to look straight at the opposite corner of the table over there, that side. Blank. How does he know my name? She ruffled her hair. Thinking for a moment, she took a piece of blue ticket, curtly wrote. "If you don't look at me, how do you know I'm looking at you? P/S, do you know my name?" And the story of the lost ticket pieces began that day. Occasionally a few words of greeting and encouragement from a stranger. Sometimes a funny story, no beginning and no end, summed up in a few short lines. The girl's aimless questions to strangers. The story continued like that, and no one was curious about the other anymore. Between them there seemed to be a love that was as smooth as water, as gentle as the rare sunshine of winter. That night, Thien An carefully folded the colorful tickets into a notebook. Below, she neatly wrote a sentence: "If you love, you must love at the first meeting. If after a long time there is love, it is called super love. When I first met, I didn't know anything about the other person, but I felt that he was attached to me. That is a predestined relationship that not everyone has the opportunity to find." After that, the end-of-term exams kept pouring in, so she didn't go to Nguyen very often, but she also didn't forget the colorful tickets, the tickets that connected her life with the stranger. Then she went to wind again when the cold winter winds snarled each other. Even though she tried to pull up her scarf to avoid the wind, the cold still penetrated deeply. She misses wind, craves the shop's hot matcha. The shop was crowded, the familiar seat was already occupied, so she had to choose another place. Matcha was brought up, she wrapped her hand around the cup. Thien An looked at the opposite corner like a habit, but she did not see a stranger, but instead was a strange girl with chestnut hair hanging loosely on her shoulders. After a while, a stranger came and the two talked, but she couldn't hear well from this side. Thien An kept sitting in the dark corner until the two of them left the shop. The stranger still looked around before leaving. Thien An lowered his head and hid his face behind the scarf. For some reason, when she saw the stranger and the girl, the feeling of discomfort mixed with jealousy kept thickening in her heart. She began to look back on the past days. She let strangers enter her heart so quickly, as fast as the cold winter wind to the bone. Even if she tried to warm it, it still penetrated deep into her skin, light but enough. Makes the heart ache. Strangers will never know that the little girl Thien An, who is always afraid of being hurt, has closed her heart for a long time. She is childish, carefree, always wanting a hand to hold, but when she has it, not brave enough to accept. She was afraid to see her mother's silent tears when her father left home. She was afraid that love would cause her pain. Love at that time for her was like a soap bubble. A light touch was broken. Strangers were like another world, vivid and colorful. He knows many things, will often have intelligent answers to Thien An's stupid questions. It is a coincidence that both Thien An and a stranger love Italy. Thien An's dream is to visit Italy once, and strangers can tell her everything about this beautiful country. That boot. About a Verona, a land famous for dreams of love and nostalgia, the origin of the immortal love story in Shakespeare's plays, Romeo and Juliet. But now what? Who is that girl? Her heart was suddenly confused, her breathing was interrupted, the stinging feeling in her heart continued to spread, choking her heart. That night, she opened the little notebook, looked at the ticket pieces, turned to the next page and wrote, "Then we will have to accept that there are people we can only keep in our hearts, not in our hearts. Must be in this life." Wind Cafe, strangers. The next day, a young man came to sit near the window, where a few models of gondolas, an old piano, and a few masks were hung up. When the wind chimes tinkled, the young man raised his head again, and then a hidden disappointment. When the shop was about to close, the new guy approached the table the girl used to sit on, pulled out a ticket, still the familiar words he had written. This ticket she had not read. "Thien An, I have to fly to Italy. I want to talk to you not through pieces of paper anymore. See you, 7 p.m., day XX in Wind." Wind Cafe, Saturday night. Nguyen laughed as he stared at the little girl telling the story. He slyly said, "Because of the fact that I did not have time to read the note left by a stranger, I thought I had lost a love?" Thien An tapped a spoon into the half-empty matcha cup, saying, "Because I was afraid of getting hurt, I ran away, but now I regret it." "If you regret it, go find him." "How can I find it? Even though he and I talk a lot, we never ask each other for phone numbers, Facebook, Yahoo, Skype, or something, because I feel it's not necessary." Thien An frowned. Nguyen laughs. "What I thought was unnecessary is now necessary for me to find that person." But hey, life always has miracles, believe it. If enough grace, love will return. The owner stood up and turned away, no one had time to see his suppressed smile. Dark. Originally online on Facebook, after drinking a bottle of cold water to quench his thirst, he clicked on a person's name. Nguyen ran his finger on the text key, started inboxing. The chat between Nguyen and the stranger. Nguyen, Thien An just came to win tonight. Stranger, yeah. Nguyen, she was angry with you because the time you took your cousin to my shop, she sat in another corner that day, that stupid girl thought you had a lover, so she suddenly disappeared. As for you dating her, it's true that after the day she saw you and your cousin, she didn't go to the shop anymore, so she couldn't read the note you sent. Stranger. Nguyen, why? Stranger, I'm afraid I'll hurt her. Thien An's family is not happy, so she always lacks a sense of security in relationships. You know, I'm so far away from her. Nguyen paused to think for a moment, then slowly continued typing each word. Finding the right person for me is not easy, let alone since the first time I met her. I have loved her for such a long time. Don't give up just because you're afraid of getting hurt. At least, you're still luckier than me. Stranger, Nguyen, sorry, touching your sadness. I have something to give her, something to give me. Nguyen, yeah, come back and see that girl soon. Don't run away anymore. Wind Cafe, Saturday night again, a week later. Still in the same seat, still cold matcha. Thien An put the novel aside. Nguyen came over and handed her an envelope. Thien An looked at her in bewilderment. Nguyen pressed the letter into her hand, then said a sentence and then moved away. It's a miracle for you, kid. Find the person you're looking for soon, good luck. Winking face. Thien An opened the letter with trembling hands, his familiar and neat lines appeared one after another. After reading the letter, a clear tear rolled down her cheek. The phone ringtone rang, the call was from an international number. Thien An glanced at the cup holder, just in time to see Nguyen's wink and the victory sign with his thumb. 1 month later. On the airplane. Nguyen put the book on his face, snapped his fingers, and whispered, I wish you two happiness. The matchmaker's job is done, it's time to find the matchmaker. The sky is clear, the clouds are floating, the wind is as sweet as sugar. Just love the way you want, don't be afraid to get hurt because only when you get hurt will you realize what true happiness is.